The 2011 North Carolina legislative session opens under Republican leadership. We'll meet legislative leaders of both parties next.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Hello, I'm Kelly McCullen. The 2011 legislative session opened with Republicans holding majorities in both the State House and the State Senate. Let's begin in the North Carolina Senate. It will be Republican-led for the first time since the late 1800s. 13 new GOP senators were elected in the 2010 election. That gives the Republicans a veto-proof majority of 31 members. Senator Phil Berger is the president pro tempore. Dr. James Forrester will serve as Deputy Senate President Pro Tem. Onslow County Senator Harry Brown will serve as Senate Majority Leader, with Senator Tom Apodaca serving as Rules Committee Chairman. Senator Jerry Tillman was elected Majority Whip by the Republican caucus, and Senators Pete Brunstetter, Neil Hunt, and Richard Stevens will co-chair the Senate Appropriations Committees. That's a rundown of the Senate Majority Leadership team. Senator Phil Berger, the Senate President Pro Tem, joins us on North Carolina Now Legislative Week in Review. $3.7 billion you believe you can get there without any taxes and through spending reductions or cuts. How do you do it? Not everybody agrees with that.
No, not everybody agrees with it, and there are several ways to get there. You look at it on paper, and it's just it's a matter of numbers. But what we want to do is prioritize how we address things. The first thing that we think we can do to get us to the $3.7 billion is effect some savings in the current fiscal year. The money we carry forward this year will enable us to cushion the blow for next year. So that's kind of the first step. The second step is that we go through the budget line item by line item, and we look at various programs and decide whether or not we keep these programs. We will definitely be looking at personnel levels. We'll definitely be looking at salary levels. We'll definitely be looking at other things that impact personnel and impact the overall spending. But we get there by reducing the amount of spending by a significant amount. It ends up being about 15 to 18%, and in some respects we probably eliminate programs that have been there up till now and curtail some others.
Do you foresee handing state agencies their own budget knife to cut, or do you see the Senate and the House coming together and making that determination on behalf of state agencies?
We would like to be able to give the managers in state government some discretion in making the decisions, because ultimately what we want to make sure that we do is that those functions that people depend on from government, the core governmental functions, we need to make sure that they continue in place with as little disruption as possible. And managers, good managers, are the folks that can best make those kinds of decisions. However, it would not be responsible for us to just merely say you've got to reduce X dollars from this budget and give all discretion to the agency. We've got to exercise our legislative oversight responsibility, and there will be some directive, but there will be some discretion as well.
Are you promising no new taxes at all in this biennium?
No tax increases, no extension of the temporary taxes that were put in 2 years ago.
The taxes that are on the books, are you going to let those sunset or expire? Would you see that as a tax increase if you were to renew it?
Yes.
That is a tax increase. I want to be very clear on this.
Because if we do nothing, then the tax rates go down. We would have to affirmatively enact something to raise those taxes in order to extend them. So, one of the promises that was made in the recent election was that we would not raise taxes. We would allow the temporary taxes to expire.
If you're a North Carolina taxpayer, what should you expect out of your state government once these spending reductions are in place? What's realistic?
Well, realistic, I think you can expect the schools to be in session, the teachers to be in front of the classrooms. You can expect the colleges and the community colleges to continue functioning. You can expect transportation to be addressed appropriately. I think the average taxpayer will not see that much difference in state government when we reduce the spending by that amount.
And of course, there are tens of thousands of state employees throughout this state. What should they expect? Should they quake in their boots at the sight of you up there debating? How should they react to you coming in?
Well, a lot of the elimination of positions, to the extent that occurs, will be the result of attrition, retirements, folks leaving state government for one reason or another. We would look to eliminate a number of the positions that get vacated that way. That's going to be a big part of what we do. Beyond that, I think state employees should be looking at the function that they are providing, continue to do what they've been doing. We are going to do the best that we can to address what's a real problem, which is we have a certain amount of money coming in, and we've got to reduce the level of expenditure to meet the level of revenue, which is something that is required constitutionally of us.
What do you address next once you get your feel for how you want to handle this budget writing process?
The second big issue that the legislature has to deal with this term is redistricting, and that's something that in some respects will be going on a parallel track with fiscal, because we are under some time constraints as far as getting the redistricting maps prepared and finalized.
Senator Berger, thanks for being on North Carolina Now Legislative Week in Review. We'll have you on soon if you'll come on.
Thank you, Kelly.
Senate Democrats selected Buncombe County Senator Martin Nesbitt to be minority leader. Wake County Senator Josh Stein was selected minority whip for the legislative session. Senator Martin Nesbitt will be, I guess, the loyal opposition over in the North Carolina Senate side for the 2011 session. Sir, thanks for being on the show this week.
Well, thank you for having me.
How do you foresee working with a GOP majority that can undo a veto?
Well, I think the leadership of the Senate is in good hands. I really can't comment on the House. I hadn't been over there in a while, but in the Senate, we have a much more collegial atmosphere over there, and we all know each other. All these guys that are in leadership were on my J1 committee. I consider them good friends, and I look forward to working with them.
Most interviews we're holding here, they're talking money, whether they're lawmakers, whether they're news reporters. Is that an accurate assessment?
I think it is going to be about money, and it's going to be about choices. We have a state that's considered the best place in America to do business by a lot of people who rate us. We've sold this state as being the best place to do business, not the cheapest place to do business, and you're going to hear that over and over. And we've done that by investing in our future, investing in our schools and our universities, community colleges. And our people are our strength. They're our natural resource, and we will be defending the budgets for those institutions fiercely.
You talking public education, schools, K through 12? You talking universities, colleges?
All the above. It is the seed corn of this state.
Have you talked at all with the House about a cohesive strategy of how you will approach this? Because the proposal is that they will cut, the GOP can cut $3.7 billion without raising taxes or revenues.
And they can. They can cut $6 billion if they want to without raising revenue. The question is what damage is done if you do that. And there are choices. We reached the point where we felt like we shouldn't go further at that time, and we put on a temporary sales tax, and we were criticized for that. They're going to face those same challenges. And what we will be doing, and it's an enviable position to be in, we will be looking at that, and we will tell them when they've gone too far.
What is the appropriate balance from the Senate Democratic position?
When you get into a budget, the documents, if you stack them up, they're 1.5 feet high, full of individual items. And I think it'll be issue by issue, school by school. And when we think that you've hurt the future of this state, we're going to say so.
What point would the future of the state be hurt? What could we see roughly?
Well, it's a matter of degrees, but I'll start with taking teachers out of the classroom.
So you lay off teachers.
You lay off teachers, that hurts the state. It creates probably a teacher shortage into the future because people won't go into teaching because they can't be assured they're going to have a job. It means in the schools that your classes get bigger. Anyone that's ever looked at education knows that that'll be detrimental for those children. Doing away with teachers' aides. You've got to have other adults in that room so that you can spend time individually with students. We have got to find a way to help small business get going out here. Right now they can't get loans. People who want to buy things from them can't get loans and don't have credit. And we've got to really pay attention to how to help small business, and just they are the hardest people to help on the planet, but we've got to find a way to do it.
We hope you'll be on the show. We've got several months of the session ahead of us. We'll have you on to discuss all the issues, and we'll get issue by issue with you if you'll come on.
We will.
Appreciate it, Senator Nesbitt.
Thank you.
Over in the North Carolina House, it will operate under an outright Republican majority for the first time since the mid-1990s. Mecklenburg County Representative Tom Tillis is the Speaker of the House. Forsyth County Representative Dale Falwell becomes House Speaker pro tem. Former House Minority Leader Representative Paul Stam shifts into the House Majority Leadership post for 2011. Former House Speaker Representative Harold Brubaker will serve as the primary chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. That committee will write the House version of the state budget. Representatives Tim Moore and Stephen LaRoque are co-chairmen of the House Rules Committee. There you have the House leadership team. Joining me, the House Speaker, Tom Tillis of Mecklenburg County. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
What do you make of the group that will be serving underneath your guidance?
I think we probably have the most unified, most focused group of Republicans ready to take on the leadership that this chamber has seen in about 140 years.
Let's go right to the first topic. Everything I've read, heard from politicians and pundits alike, $3.7 billion shortfall. You say you can tackle it without taxes.
Yeah, I think I absolutely do. In fact, not only will we need to tackle it without taxes, but we need to make it very clear that the taxes, the sales tax, the temporary sales tax, and the income tax surcharges are sunsetted on June 30th. The thing we've got to do is just look at each of the areas, the key areas of government: education, health and human services, transportation, justice and public safety, and general government. And we need to make tough decisions about where funding is grown in non-core areas and go after them first. The other thing that we're already doing in cooperation with the Senate and with the governor's office is sending a very clear message to the people leading areas of government today to spend less and revert more, so that the cuts we have to make next year will be less than they would otherwise have to be.
Who's best positioned to make cuts in the state budget and in state agencies? Do you feel your leadership, the politicians here, do that, or do you hand that duty off to agency heads to cut where they see fit?
Well, I think there's two pieces. There is the identification of the opportunities, and there's the actual execution of the cuts. And that has to be done in a balance. I think that we'll use education as an example. It's the one that most people get to first. Getting the chancellors, getting the community college presidents, getting the superintendents of K through 12 public schools in a room now, and talking with them about the constraints that the legislature places on them that makes it more difficult for them to spend money the way they see fit. That's job one. So as we're identifying the areas that we think maybe we're spending too much, maybe it's grown too much, we're also having these discussions with the senior management, the leaders of these organizations, to identify execution strategies that make sense to them and that they think will make it more likely they can execute without harming core services.
Are you listening to what they have to say? Are you hearing more of the, you can't cut there, this is too important?
No, actually, the thing I've been most pleased with since I was nominated on November the 20th, I have met with Tom Ross, I've met with chancellors of a couple of universities and some community colleges. We're about to set up meetings with superintendents of schools, and they all have more or less indicated it's a breath of fresh air, that they feel like they may be involved in the process, the strategy formulation. What we generally do is stay up here in the ivory tower, create the strategies, and then impose it on the leadership to execute. We're going to do that differently.
When you go to cut $3.7 billion, I'm presuming you've never cut $3.7 billion in your professional career, but do you cut it $100,000 at the time, or do you look for $1 billion at a clip, or $500 million? Where do you start?
Well, I think you have to go through the process first. I don't think I've been responsible for cutting $3.7 billion in my career, but on a percentage basis for large organizations, I've cut a lot. I've had to go through downsizing activities when I was at IBM and the same at Price Waterhouse. So those techniques apply, and I've done it with other businesses that have called us in when they're in trouble, and we're in trouble. So what we have to do is go in with the idea that everything is on the table. What we have to do is go in and talk to everybody from teachers in the classrooms up to the senior administrators and say, give us your perspective on things that you see happening that maybe don't really benefit you in the classroom and produce classroom outcomes, and the things that honestly are just things that you would like to have off the table. Then we'll have to make that assessment. So it's more of we're going through an identification phase right now for the opportunities. And I might add, we're doing this a lot sooner than the legislature has done in the 4 years I've been here, and I've been told decades, because we'll start our first committee meetings next week. Appropriations will meet next week, and they will continue, and they will get that process down. So I think a lot of the opportunities will be identified far sooner, and that gives us more time and more likelihood that we'll get out of here earlier rather than later. Do you see tackling one issue at a time as a priority, or do you see parallel tracks of legislation that you consider very important? Well, you see the band I have on, it says jobs and economy. Our promise to the people was to get the budget in line with revenues and do what we could to take the burden off businesses and give people an incentive to grow jobs, create jobs. So that is our first priority. We also have to focus on redistricting, and there's a certain amount of capacity that has to be there. And those will always be the things that we'll be watching to make sure that other legislative agenda items that will invariably be introduced do not detract from that. But everyone needs to understand that we're not here to just pass 3 bills this year. We will be lean. We will have limits on the number of bills that can be introduced to send the very clear message that we're going to remain focused, but we'll still pass several hundred bills. My job and the job of the leadership will be to identify in what sequence and in what time frame those bills move, so that we never detract from the core mission of getting the economy back on track and getting redistricting done. Speaker Tillis, thanks for being on the show. We'll have you on again soon. My pleasure. House Democrats will be led by former House Speaker Representative Joe Hackney this legislative session. Representative William Wainwright is Deputy Minority Leader. He is the former House Speaker pro tempore. The House Democrats have elected 5 whips: Representatives Rick Glazier, Larry Hall, Ray Rapp, Deborah Ross, and Michael Ray. We're here with House Minority Leader Joe Hackney. Thanks for being on Legislative Week.
Happy to be here. It's a new adventure, a new day.
What do you expect for 2011 as a Democrat now in the North Carolina House?
Well, it's a different role for us, but we'll be fighting for education and all the things that we've fought for traditionally. And we believe the people of North Carolina think that some of the directions of North Carolina have been the right direction. We've had North Carolina moving ahead in large part because of improving education, because of access to community colleges, because of great universities, and things like biotechnology and expanding medical research. Those things have built a new North Carolina, and we don't need to go backwards on those kinds of things.
Do you think Republicans will go after those things that you say represent progress in the state?
First of all, we've had very good working relationships about the transition. But secondly, I'm very disturbed at some of the statements I've been hearing from the new majority, in the sense that they don't seem to want to look at what the needs of North Carolina are, but simply to predetermine the budget based not on what our needs are or what might move North Carolina forward, but simply what revenues were at a particular time. A short way to put it is they think cutting taxes is more important than moving or keeping education strong.
You think the taxpayer, the voter out there, would vote for higher taxes to keep a school teacher in the classroom?
I don't know what they would vote for, but I will tell you this. Our polling consistently showed over a period of several years, including this last fall, that where severe cuts in important state government programs, important to North Carolina, were on the table, they want a balanced approach. They want some revenues and some cuts, maybe more cuts than revenues, which is the way we did it.
When you were House Speaker, did you cut as much as you felt comfortable cutting, or is there room to cut even in education?
We always need to look for efficiencies. We need to always re-examine the education establishment because it consumes so much of our money. It's 60% of our budget. And so we always need to be looking for ways to make it more efficient, to improve it, but we always ought to look at our kids. We have had a balanced budget every single year. The budget will be balanced this year that we're in. We're on track to have a balanced budget. We finished last year with a balanced budget. We are in good shape in terms of our retirement system. There are some needs there. But Bill and I were just looking at a survey which indicated that North Carolina's retirement system was the best funded in America. So we haven't ravaged that like in some states. We haven't mortgaged our lottery proceeds into the future. We haven't sold our state parks and leased them back. You know, those things, North Carolina has done a lot of things right to keep our fiscal situation stable. And we're one of 7 states with a AAA bond rating. We need to keep it.
Representative Hackney, it's good to have you on. We're going to have you on a lot during this session,
Well,
I do
thank
believe.
you.
I hope you'll be on the show with us.
Look forward to it.
The state budget will be the top issue early in this legislative session. The legislature will also redraw legislative and congressional boundaries now that the U.S. Census numbers are in from last year. Indications are the Republicans will propose lifting the state's 100 campus cap on charter schools and consider passing voter ID legislation. Bills calling for state referenda on limiting eminent domain and defining marriage as being between one man and woman could be debated. Governor Beth Perdue does have veto power of legislation except for redistricting, but the Senate GOP majority is veto-proof. House Republicans would need 4 Democratic crossover votes to override a gubernatorial veto. To analyze the issues and the leaders of the North Carolina General Assembly in 2011 is Greensboro News and Record reporter Mark Berger. Thanks for being on the show. Sure. Very quickly, we have a new House Speaker coming in, Representative Tom Tillis of Mecklenburg County. What kind of leader is he?
He's been in the House for 2 terms, which is a little bit unusual. Usually, House Speakers have been around for a little bit longer, and it was actually one of the first questions he was asked immediately after his caucus picked him. And he said, look, I'm a business leader. I've worked for IBM for a while. I'm in the business of helping other people achieve their goals. And that's really, I think, how he sees himself, at least what I've gotten from him, is he sees himself as the guy who's going to facilitate all these other kind of older hands in doing their work and doing their job efficiently.
Across the aisle will be House Minority Leader Representative Joe Hackney, the former House Speaker. He's been around a while. How do you expect him to lead as a minority leader now?
I think we're going to see something out of him that we haven't seen during his time as Speaker, which is he's going to be back to floor debating. He's going to be back to making the Democratic case on key issues as sort of the chief spokesman for that cause. And I think a lot of people are going to be reminded of why he was Speaker in the first place. He's very good at making his cases.
In the Senate, President Pro Tem, or Phil Berger of Eden, North Carolina. Describe his leadership style for folks who may not know Senator Berger.
Senator Berger is, in the truest sense of the phrase, he's an old country lawyer. He comes from Rockingham County, which is kind of a rural county, and his law practice back there is a little bit of everything. A guy who very much worked his way up. He at one point in his career was catching lumber as it came off a conveyor belt and said, well, enough of this, I'm going to go to college and law school. Folksy guy, just very down to earth, and not a grandstander at all.
The Buncombe County Senator Democrat Martin Nesbitt will be the Senate Minority Leader.
Again, a very good debater, somebody who is going to be called upon really to make the case in high-pressure circumstances.
You're reporting a $3.7 billion budget shortfall beginning in July 1st of 2011. We've heard about the money. Is that the top issue far and beyond anything else we'll hear debated down here this session?
It really has to be, and it has to be for a couple of reasons. One, the Republicans who are in control of the legislature campaigned, we're going to take care of the budget first. B, the budget is the major policy and an action document of the state. And if the budget is out of whack, nothing else works.
Would you expect them to go ahead and write a budget and get one passed early in the spring, or will we still do the negotiations up to the last minute, June 30th, maybe with some rollover into the first of the year?
Well, they're talking about different ways of doing things. The House and Senate are talking about ways to write the budget a little bit more together, so there's less of this push and pull between the chambers. The governor still has some input on the budget, so there's some consideration there that has to be taken into effect. I think also they'll want to look later in the spring in that March-April time frame, March-April-May, when they start getting updated revenue numbers, and they want to see how the inflow of money is going before they make any final decisions on the budget. So if they can meet the June 30th deadline, great. I think they're aiming for that. Will it surprise me if they go a few days later? Yeah, but they're really talking like they want to have it done right up before June 30th.
Other issues, you've written about voter ID, charter school cap, eminent domain, federal health care policy exemptions. We have about 45 seconds left. What comes right behind the spending debate?
Immediately behind is redistricting, redrawing the legislative districts. And then behind that, any of them are the issues that you ticked off could be, I would think eminent domain would be high on the list this year because that's a constitutional amendment and would make sort of sense to have that before the voters as people go to municipal elections this fall.
Well, Mark, we could have you on and talk 30 minutes about each of the topics we've outlined here. This is just to get us started in 2011. Thanks for being on North Carolina Now Legislative Week in Review.
Not a problem. Thank you.
We'll be covering legislative action online throughout the weeks of the 2011 legislative session. You can find us on Facebook. Go to the Facebook search bar and type in Legislative Week in Review. Feel free to leave some comments and questions there. We'll write back and engage you. If you're on Twitter, so is this program. Follow us at NCN Legweek, and you can always send your thoughts to me and the team here by email, legweek@unctv.org, as well as surf to us online at unctv.org/Legweek. That's our program for this week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.